Imagine this. You spend your entire life trying to fit in. You shape your speech, your clothing, your choices, all in pursuit of approval. You bend to expectations that aren't even yours and gradually drift away from who you really are. You fear judgment. You seek validation in eyes that change with every season, clinging to the idea that your worth depends on how the world perceives you. But what if everything you were taught about caring too much is wrong? What's truly holding you back from living? What if the key to confidence, freedom, and even success isn't in controlling things, but in letting go of control? Michel de Montaigne, a 16th century thinker, explored this paradox deeply. While the world around him was collapsing in wars, he retreated to a silent tower, not to escape, but to observe the human soul. His essays did not aim to indoctrinate, but to liberate, and his philosophy, far from being abstract, serves as a compass for those who seek to live lightly, authentically, and with inner peace. Montaigne challenged conventional notions of success, questioned the need to please others, and pointed to a path of serenity, detachment. In this video, we'll walk that path. We'll examine the anxiety of seeking approval, the fear of failure, the addiction to control. With Montaigne as our guide, we'll discover what happens when you simply stop caring about what never truly mattered. From early on, we're taught to believe that controlling everything will keep us safe from mistakes, judgment, failure, as if life were a precise equation and all it takes is effort, planning, and worry to maintain order. But Montaigne, observing the human condition with calm, unclouded eyes, saw something few dare admit. Control is often an illusion. We live in constant attempts to dominate the uncontrollable, what others think, what might happen, how we will be perceived. In this Herculean effort, we expend our most vital energy that could be devoted to creation, presence, love. Montaigne nearly died in a horse accident, confronting him with life's absolute fragility. He realized no plan, no precaution, no obsessive worry would have saved him from that chance. Paradoxically, it was in this moment that something lit up in his soul. Life is not about control. Life is about embracing the flow. He wrote, "My life has been full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened." This simple phrase dismantles an entire modern mindset. How many anxieties do you carry for scenarios that never materialized? How many nights lost trying to predict the future or correct the past? How many dialogues rehearsed in your mind, attempting to control reactions that never came? The truth is, the effort to control distances us from reality, preventing us from hearing what life is saying right now. Ironically, the tighter we try to hold the reins, the more unstable everything becomes. Montaigne invites us to observe this obsession with tenderness and then gently release it. Life, in essence, is not a machine to operate. It's a living organism full of surprises, flourishing only for those courageous enough to dance with the unpredictable. There is an invisible force silently guiding many of our steps, the desire to be accepted. From childhood, we learn that approval is a reward, a proud glance, a compliment, a sign of belonging. Gradually, we build our identity around what pleases others. But Montaigne observed, with cutting precision, that this path leads to an inner labyrinth. When we live for others' acceptance, we lose touch with what is truly ours. He wrote to understand, not to convince. He sought authenticity, not applause. Perhaps that's why his texts still resonate deeply, because Montaigne had the rare courage to think for himself in a world demanding conformity. The pursuit of validation is subtle, almost imperceptible. It's in the choice of clothing, in withholding an opinion, in constant adaptation to the environment. We don't want to disturb, we don't want to disappoint, but by avoiding others' discomfort, we imprison ourselves. Tragically, when validation finally arrives, it doesn't satisfy us because it was aimed not at our true self, but at the mask we wore to be accepted. Montaigne proposes another path, to know oneself so fully, to accept oneself so completely, that others' opinions lose the power to hurt or shape us. He asks us, whom are you trying to please and why? How many decisions in your life, professional, personal, existential, were made out of fear of judgment rather than true desire. When you stop seeking acceptance everywhere, you discover something rare and precious: self-acceptance. From there, relationships become more honest, decisions lighter, and life quietly yours. Detachment isn't coldness, indifference, apathy, or avoidance. Detachment is clarity. It is the wisdom to distinguish what deserves our energy from what merely consumes it. It's knowing when to let go, not because we don't care, but because holding on is no longer worthwhile. Montaigne understood this paradox deeply. He observed how people were trapped by outcomes, expectations, and idealized images of themselves, generating constant tension and corrosive anxiety. He didn't propose renouncing life, on the contrary, but living lightly, acting with dedication yet without obsession, loving without possessiveness, pursuing without losing oneself. In his retreat, Montaigne wrote, "Not out of obligation but out of curiosity, not to be recognized but to understand myself." And it's in this space of non-compulsive effort, this creative void, that the soul blooms. How often in your life have you achieved something precisely when you stopped forcing it, when you stopped trying to convince, impress, or conquer? It's as if the universe responds to surrender with harmony. This is the paradox of detachment. The less you need to prove, the more natural your presence. The less you try to control, the more things align themselves. And it's not luck, it's presence. It's coherence between what you feel, think, and do. It's the magnetism of one who doesn't beg for acceptance because they've already found a home within themselves. Montaigne teaches us that detachment is a form of power, serene, silent, transforming without imposing. When you release the weight of pleasing, controlling, or appearing perfect, you become light enough to walk freely and firm enough to be who you truly are. Montaigne was neither a cynic nor a tragic hero. He was deeply aware of his flaws and, perhaps for that reason, profoundly wise. He suffered immense loss. 5 of his 6 children died in infancy. His closest friend Etienne de la Boétie passed away early, and France faced political and social collapse. Pain and disillusionment didn't make him cynical, they made him real. Instead of hardening, he withdrew from politics and power, retreating to his tower, a space of silence, books, and meditation. There, amid wooden corridors and Latin inscriptions on his library ceiling, he began what he called the study of himself, not to exalt, but to accept. In his essays, Montaigne reveals his soul with rare honesty, confessing his vanities, weaknesses, fears, and inconsistencies. And it is precisely this vulnerability that makes him universal. He wrote, "I do not depict myself completely, only as I see myself at this moment." This phrase carries a liberating truth. No one is constant, no one is perfect, and everything is in motion. Accepting this is to abandon armor, to stop performing an ideal version of oneself, and finally inhabit one's humanity. In today's world where everyone competes for an image of success, coherence, and perfection, Montaigne is an antidote. He reminds us that being human means contradicting oneself, changing opinions, accepting imperfection, not as weakness but as liberation. By letting go of unattainable ideals, reality manifests: the lightness of error, the beauty of doubt, the peace of simply being. And thus, Montaigne delivers one of philosophy's most healing lessons. Wisdom doesn't come from perfection, but from intimacy with imperfection. If detachment reveals its true strength anywhere, it's in human relationships. Montaigne, with a deep and clear-eyed perspective, saw how we become captives of one another, not through true love, but fear of rejection, loneliness, or inadequacy. How many times have you tried to shape someone into your image? How many times have you been frustrated because they didn't meet expectations they may not even have known existed? Suffering in relationships doesn't come from differences, but from our attempts to control, trap, or correct. He wrote tenderly about his friendship with La Boétie, a bond that required nothing, demanded nothing. It simply was. Free of possessiveness, this friendship revealed what's possible when we love without owning. He proposes a rare ideal: relationships based on presence, not obligation, on giving, not domination. And here's the paradox. The tighter you try to hold someone, the more they escape. But the more you allow them to be, the more they choose to stay. Freedom in relationships isn't absence of connection. It's refusing to turn the other into a mirror of your insecurities. Montaigne teaches that the true encounter between two souls occurs when both walk side by side, by choice, not obligation. And this freedom is magnetic. It generates respect, admiration, and depth. It attracts not through force, but through lightness, not through control, but authenticity. Ask yourself, how many of your relationships are driven by fear of loss rather than the joy of sharing? The answer may hurt, but it can also free. There is a silent, almost imperceptible moment when something within us simply lets go. It's not giving up. It's not weakness. It's a kind of wisdom that comes not from reason, but from sacred exhaustion. It's when you realize you cannot control everything, that you don't need to prove yourself constantly, that carrying so many worries is meaningless. Montaigne knew this moment well, and from it his philosophy flourished. Surrender is not renunciation, but reconciliation with life. He didn't advocate passivity, but action free from anguish, a life engaged yet unburdened by guarantees. He understood that deep peace arises only when we stop resisting the impermanence of the world. This peace is revolutionary because letting go makes you lighter, clearer, and receptive to the unexpected. What happens when you stop caring what others think? You speak with more truth. What happens when you stop seeking perfection? You act with more courage. And when you release fear of failure, you create space to love, create, live. Surrender for Montaigne wasn't escape. It was presence. It was to stop fighting reality and start dancing with it. And here's the greatest paradox. The less you try to control life, the more it aligns itself. Perhaps because in surrender, you finally become who you are, and the world responds in harmony. Montaigne left a silent legacy, not rules, formulas, or certainties, but a fuller presence in life. He taught us that obsession with control is the opposite of freedom, that the constant effort to please others is the enemy of authenticity, and that fear of failure is often the only real barrier between us and the life we wish to live. In this journey, we see that detachment is not abandonment, it's trust. It's stepping off center stage and letting life reveal its choreography. And here's the most beautiful mystery of all. When you stop caring about what doesn't matter, what matters begins to flourish. When you release fear, courage comes. When you release the need to prove yourself, the silent power of simply being emerges. Montaigne doesn't ask us to change the world. He invites us to change how we inhabit ourselves. And when that happens, the world around us changes too. And you, what are you holding so tightly that it has begun to hurt you? What could happen if, for a moment, you just let go? Share your experience with detachment, with letting go in the comments. By telling your story, you may help others.